What's up, golf addicts? This is David Barnett. Along with me is Pat Perry. We are the Tour Junkies. And this is Tour Junkies presented. No, that's not what this is. What is this show again? What are we doing? Oh, yeah.
It's called TJ After
Dark presented by DraftKings.
Yeah.
I was going to say this is Tour Junkies presented by DraftKings After Dark. That would be confusing to some. But it is late. We have just recorded our podcast. I have just had a lot of unnamed vodka brand drinks. But I normally would drink here, but I have water right now because
good for you.
In our actual podcast recording, which you can also catch on our YouTube channel, I lost a bet last week to you, thanks to Byung-Hun An. Freaking screwed me. So I lost a bet and I had to take a shot of ranch water.
That's what's left of it. Why don't you finish that off?
This is residue ranch, but trust me, there was plenty of clumpy ranch that I shot down and almost threw up live on this show that went down with this, and I'm not feeling fantastic. I mean, my stomach, everything feels like it's right here. I
didn't realize ranch could do that much to you. Because I like ranch.
I love ranch. I think it's
but it clumps with water. Yeah, the clump.
I literally feel like it's right here, and it could come up at any moment. So I'm just drinking water right now. Probably the first TJ After Dark that I've recorded in almost 2 years without an adult beverage. But it is what it is. We're here to cover.
I'll try to make up for it.
Good. We're not here to talk about that. We're here to cover the Memorial from Muirfield Village. It's Jack's tournament. We just saw Muirfield Village, but we saw it a little bit differently, Pat. Before we get into a couple picks that we disagreed on the podcast, but didn't really have a chance to go deep down into the wormhole of why, and before we cover some DK Sportsbook outrights and maybe some matchup bets that we kind of liked, let's learn a little more about what the viewers can expect from Muirfield Village this week. What's going to be a little bit different? How are you approaching this extremely strong field? It's a little bit more limited than we saw last week. And guess what? The big cat, Tiger Woods, is back. So talk to us a little bit about the golf course, key stats, strategy, etc.
Yeah, so I'm running through it real quick because obviously we're running it back again after week one. And we are at Muirfield Village Golf Club. Once again, it is a par 72. It's playing just over 7,400 yards. Less players this week at 133 players. That is because this tournament has invitational status on tour, meaning a little bit more money and a little bit more points that these guys get. But we still get T65 and ties for the cut. It is a Jack Nicklaus design. As you mentioned, this is Jack's place, as everyone loves to call it. The greens are bent grass with POA, but pretty much putt just like bent grass. Extremely undulating greens, which is what you would expect out of a Jack Nicklaus design, and especially here at his favorite course that he designed. Because he loved Augusta, and he wanted those tight greens, I think, and that's why you see some undulation here. But it's a traditional par 72 with 4 par 5s, 4 par 3s. It is very tree-lined fairways, but they're pretty big, not all that difficult to hit. The biggest difference we're going to see, I think, between last week and this week is the rough is going to be a little bit higher, which actually the rough played a little more difficult than I thought it was going to play last week. I mean, there were some guys that would get in the rough, and if you're watching Shot Link or whatever else, and they just could punch it out. That's all they could do. Well, it's even going to be a little bit more thick this week. Even though these fairways are pretty easy to hit, you're going to have some problems if you miss the fairways. You're going to have some problems. The greens are also, I think, going to be much quicker. So if you do miss a fairway, you're not going to have a whole lot of leeway to be able to, even if you have a good lie with these faster greens, it could be somewhat of a problem. So I think it's going to play a little bit more difficult this week. Maybe not a ton more difficult, but I do think there is going to be some difference for sure. The greens will probably run around 13 on the step meter, which they were around 11 last week, and that's a big difference. Only 2. 11 and 13.
Two inches makes a difference.
That's a big difference. That is a big difference. So
for sure,
we'll see. As far as stats I'm looking at, again, it's a second shot course. We talked about that last week, so I looked at stroke gain approach. if you do miss the greens with the rough here, you do have to scramble pretty good. So I did look at scrambling. I looked at bogey avoidance. I mean, there's water on 11 on the 18 holes that comes into play. You can't have these big blow up holes out here. You still got to keep it in the fairways, hit these greens and things like that. And then I took a look at some budding. I took a look at some budding on bent, or maybe putting on bent grass greens over a longer period of time, just to see which guys, tend to putt well there. So there you go. You don't need past champs, do you? Do you want to hear some past champs? I can give it to you. But besides Morikawa last week and Patrick Cantlay last week, that's in Bryson. Bryson's won here before, and he's the highest priced guy we got this week on DraftKings. So.
Yeah, I think the key to think through at Muirfield with this setup, which is going to be the more traditional Memorial Tournament Muirfield setup, where, as Pat mentioned, faster greens, longer rough. You got winners like Cantlay last year at 19 under, Bryson at 15 under the year before that. But you've also got your randoms like William McGirt, David Lingmerth, shorter players like Matt Kuchar's won here in 2013. Hideki, who's, not long, but he's not super short either. He's won in 2014. You got a lot of different players. Tiger's won here a bunch. A lot of different players can win here. This is a pretty special event. Everybody tries to, I feel like, peak for this event, play well here. A lot's at stake. This is the strongest. This is slated to be the strongest field for a PGA Tour event in history. Now, majors are not technically PGA Tour events. This is going to be a really stacked field. So you got a lot of big names to wade through here. A lot of guys in great form. I don't really penalize a guy if they didn't play the workday last week at Muirfield. There's no reason to really penalize them for that. Maybe the rest helps some of these guys, but if they're familiar with Muirfield Village from years past playing the Memorial, I don't think it really matters if they didn't play last week. So I wouldn't do that, and I wouldn't go overboard overvaluing players who did play last week, or really chalking it up as anything more than just very recent form, right? Obviously, we saw Morikawa and JT battle it out in an amazing playoff. You're going to have a fair amount of recency bias because people are going to be thinking, okay, well, this guy played last week and he played this course last week. So your standard recency bias that is just, this guy was on TV on Sunday at this course just last week playing really well. Like, that's amplified now because it's the same course. So if you're playing in a really public contest, you're going to have a lot of people gravitating towards names like Cantlay, who played really well on Sunday, Woodland, who finished top 10, Victor Hovland, Morikawa, JT, who were in the final group and battled it out. Xander played pretty well, ended up sneaking up there pretty good. So you're going to have some recency bias there. It's Tiger's back too. Tiger's back. It was the first time we've seen him since the restart. In terms of Tiger, because I don't really think we're going to talk about him otherwise, maybe in the sports book section, Pat. In terms of Tiger, you mentioned that you kind of like playing him in DFS, which I don't hate. I don't hate that play. It'll be interesting to see where his ownership falls, but here's what we know. Tiger's used to long layoffs and popping up and playing in an event and competing. He's used to that. This is not like a, hey, let's wait and see what we get from Tiger. No, like, he's very comfortable here. Very, everything we've seen from him prior to COVID and quarantine has been exceptional. I don't think that you have to wait and see on Tiger. I just don't. And his ownership, I don't know, it could be rather flatlined or rather diluted up top with so many big names and so many players playing so well in this field being so stacked. I mean, what would his ownership have to be, Pat, for you to completely avoid him? What would it have to get up to for you to completely avoid him in big tournament contests on DraftKings?
In big tournament contests, I think if he's around like 16 to 18%, I might start to avoid him. Yep. But less than that, I don't think I am. I really don't. Yeah. And I agree with you. I mean, Tiger is not like, look, Tiger is – he's going to try to win this tournament for, like, I think I saw, like, the first time somebody since, like, Sam Snead to win a tournament in, like, 4 separate decades. So the 90s, the 2000s, whatever.
That's freaking insane.
So he's a seasoned veteran. He's coming back. He wouldn't be playing in this tournament if he wasn't trying to win. I mean, Tiger has said that his entire career. He does not play a tournament except for to try and win. He's not just trying to top 10 it, top 20 it, or whatever. No. So to get a guy especially if we get him less than 16% owned or whatever in that range, I will gladly play him. And just look at what we've seen during the pandemic. Just even an expedition or exhibition matches or whatever, if you're watching on Twitter or Instagram or whatever, the dude is he's still firing on all cylinders. So I'm a big fan this week, and I will play him.
Okay,
unless he's 20% owned, then I probably might.
Yeah, I think your number's about right. Like when he starts creeping over 15, it's like, well, I mean, if you're really convicted about him, you want to play him. I don't think you have to avoid him there. But in terms of some leverage, I think you're right. I think over 15, I start to think, I think I'll pass. Another player that I'm going to pass on that you said you really liked, and I'm going to need some. I think I'm going to need some convincing, but you don't really have to convince me, but the point of this show is to try to convince the viewers of what to do. I think there's going to be some viewers that want you to convince them as to why you would want to play Mark Leishman. You mentioned Mark Leishman on the podcast. Now, this is his 4th event back since the restart. Before the restart, doing pretty good. Since the restart, 2 missed cuts and a 58th place finish. So talk to me about what it is that you're enjoying about Mark Leishman enough to want to play him.
Well, one of the things first off, that we always talk about with golf is the variability of golf and the sport in general. It's very hard to peg a lot of these guys, and we try to look at recent form. We try to look at course history, stats, things like that. I think Leishman is one of those guys that is a little bit of a gut play for me. But let's just go back. So before we got into the pandemic, he won at the Farmers, so he was first there. The very last tournament that we finished before this whole thing started, he was 2nd place at the Arnold Palmer. And now he started bad from, with the miscut at the Schwab, miscut it last week, which I think is going to put his ownership even less. And that's the thing that I think is going to be the biggest difference is he was at 13% owned last week at the workday. I don't think we're going to get that at all. I think it's going to drop down to more like 7 or 8%, which I like him even better. And if you look at the stats for him, it's not really that terrible. I mean, yeah, he's hadn't been great, but he's 16th in the field in strokes gained approach, and that's over his last 12 rounds. So we're throwing in some missed cuts there. So he's still checking the box in approach, which is huge this week. You look at other stats here with him. He is, 35th in field strokes gained tee to green, 35th in proximity, 46 in greens and regulation. He is 26 in bogey avoidance. So he's got everything lined up. The thing that's been killing him is the putter. It's been horrible. If you look at his putter, it has been terrible. He has lost strokes last week at the workday, at the Travelers, at the Charles Schwab. He lost strokes. You go back to Donald Palmer, which, again, was a long time ago. He gained 6 strokes. But the putter has really been the key. It hasn't been in a whole lot of other spots for him. And we know that you can get hot at any time with a putter. And he's not he's not typically that bad on bent grass greens. When you look over look in the last 100 rounds in this field, he's top 40 in the field and putting on bent grass greens. So he's up there, at least in the top third. If he can get his putter going and just have a few things drop for him, I think that Leishman can have a really good week. I don't think his game is that far off. So I like him. And if I can get a little bit less ownership than 13%, I hope it's less than 13. If his ownership doesn't change off of that, then change. Yes. Then I may not want to play him. But it should change. It should change.
Yeah, he was 13% owned, and he missed the cut by 6 shots last week. Like it's going down. It's going down with the recent format. There's no way he's above 8%. I don't think he gets above 8. You're kind of working on me a little bit. Like I'm starting to see, like in a tournament, in a big tournament, you want somebody with high upside, which Leishman definitely long term has always had high upside. He's a winner. He's contended in majors.
But look where he's around too. Like he's right there with Neiman, Garcia, Spieth, who people just continually, but right above that, Casey, that I think is a good play, and Cooch. So he's kind of lost right there in that range. I think he's sort of lost. Who knows? Maybe we can get him. If I can get Leishman at like 5 or 6% ownership, my goodness, I may go just buck wild on some Mark Leishman this week.
Okay.
But a guy right there, for me, the same thing. Like you're going after a guy again for the second week in a row.
Oh God! Don't make me defend him.
After you had to take a ranch water shot, Ben on. I don't understand it because we know he can't putt. He's 121st in the field in strokes gained putting on bent grass greens over his last 100 rounds. Like you liked him on the pod again. Like you went back to him after he made you want to throw up and get sick. So actually there's part of me that's like, all right, DB is going to take a ranch water shot on the show, but then he's going to get back on him. He's going to almost throw up and do all this kind of stuff. So tell me why. Just like give me like I could even like get
tell me tidbits.
Why. Yeah. 2 tidbits on Ben on coming back for me. And I know the course history is good, so I'll give you that. But give me one thing outside of the course history. Just one thing.
Okay, I think I'll give you a couple things. Well, there is course history, but there are guys that have course history, and then there are guys that have course history and love a golf course. Byung-Hun An, if you go back and read quotes from press clippings the last 5 years, Byung-Hun An loves Memorial. He loves it. He loves the way it suits his eye. He loves the vibe. He loves the tournament. He loves the court. He loves it. He wants to win this golf tournament. A lot of people do. Everybody does, right?
Probably should have won a few times.
He probably should have. It is exceptional. He has an exceptional record here. Okay, so there's that. There's not just the course record, but the narrative side that he loves playing here and he's comfortable here. Obviously, last week he came out very flat on Thursday and did not play well. He started out Friday like 4 under, I think, on his first 9 holes, and then had one bad hole, and then basically I feel like he just kind of mailed it in. He missed the cut by 2 shots last week. Okay, 2 shots. Like that's not. I mean, Leishman missed the cut by 6. Justin Rose missed the cut by 12 last week. Okay, it's not 2 shots. Doesn't mean the guy is just a disaster right now. Here's what Byung-Hun An has never done well: putt. Okay, never. So you can always count on his putting to suck. But the one surface that he putts the best on is bent grass greens, which you have here at Muirfield Village. Not just that, but what I see tee to green is that over the long term, Byung-Hun An typically gains strokes tee to green in every category: off the tee, approach, and chipping around the greens. What he has not done since the restart that's very abnormal is he's lost strokes 3 out of the 4 events he's played in around the green, which typically he is honestly one of the best chippers and scramblers on the PGA Tour since he's come out. Okay, he's one of the best. He's had 5 top 10s since the 2019-2020 season started back in the fall. So he has upside. He has top 10 upside, and we see him go and pop. Like, look at 2019 when the season started. He misses the cut at the Safeway and the Shriners. Two events he had no business missing the cut. Then what does he do? He comes back the next 3 events and goes 6th, 8th, 14th at the WGC. Okay, then he misses the cut at the Amex. Finishes 68th at the Farmers. Then what does he do? 9th at the Waste Management, 29th at the WGC, 4th at the Honda. So he is one of these players that is always kind of here or there. There's not a whole lot of in between, which in a tournament you want that kind of upside for Byung-Hun An. And as I said, he pissed off a lot of people last week. 12% owned in the Millie Maker, 19% owned in the $555 single entry contest. So all the sharps, a lot of sharp money, a lot of big money was on Byung-Hun An last week. He pissed a lot of people off. He's going to dip like your boy Mark Leishman. So I think you're going to get sub 10% ownership leverage at 7,700 on a guy that loves this golf course. You're just going to have to – it's just going to be – it's like drinking ranch water. You're just going to have to hit the button. hit the button, close your eyes.
You're like gonna have to.
God.
You're gonna have to like hold your nose when
Yeah.
you're taking them. You're gonna clicking on your lineup.
Yeah.
And just like avoid the bad smell, but he might come out smelling like roses at the end. I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Let's talk some DK Sportsbook, Pat. We got to talk Tiger. Tiger's at 26-1 currently as we look tonight on Monday evening. 26-1 at Tiger. What do you think about that? Is DK throwing us a bone, or is the number short because they know a lot of public money tends to come in on Tiger? What do you think about that number? We talked about him in DFS. What do you think about him in terms of the outright betting market?
See, I don't mind the number. I think it's about right. I think if we were to see him have played like 2 or 3 events or 2 events leading up to this, it would probably be somewhere around like 15-1 or even 18-1. So I feel like I still think you're getting a little bit of good value at 26-1 on Tiger in an event that he's won 5 times, that he loves. We know he's in form. I mean, look, I don't care if we haven't seen him play in a tournament in months. That doesn't mean he's not in good form, because the guy just like he's such a seasoned veteran, practices all the time. He's playing every event to win, like I mentioned before. So I just feel like it's a pretty good price for him. Now, I wish it was 40-1 or something, but you're not going to get Tiger at 40-1. That's just not going to happen. No. So at 26-1, I'm okay with it. I don't mind it, and I know you don't like the shorter bets, and I think there's some shorter guys in here that I like better just because of the fact that we have actually seen them play recently. But I don't mind throwing some dollars on Tiger at 26-1. I think he could be a lot shorter than that.
Okay.
Like, what is he in the majors? So, like, let's compare it to the majors. Like, he's probably a lot shorter in the majors, and yet those are way out.
I mean, I'm sure he is at Augusta. Yeah, and the difference in a major and a tournament like this is most majors, except the PGA, tend to not be birdie fests, where it brings a lot more people into the field. Whereas this is kind of a birdie fest. It's gonna be a 18 to 20 under winner.
See, I agree. I disagree on that. I think it's gonna be a little less this week.
Okay. Let's move quickly here. What other outrights do you have?
I'll go in
other matchups.
I know you don't like the short guys, but one of the guys that I loved on the podcast from a DraftKings standpoint that I still think you could bet him is 20-1. I like Jon Rahm. I like how he finished with his 64 on Sunday last week. He gained 4.3 strokes on strokes gained approach, which was where he was struggling from the restart, and that was actually his. Like I just went back to every single round to the first part of the year, and he has not even really been close to gaining 4.3 strokes and strokes gained approach on the field. So I think that's a sign that he may have found a little bit of something. So yeah. I like some Rahm at 20-1. I think that's a good play. I like Xander. I'm a big fan of Xander at 22-1. And then Victor Hovland, who we've seen just play fantastic since the restart at 25-1. I think if you're going to play those guys with those shorter odds, put a little more money on it and just see what happens. But those are 3 guys that I really like in this range on the shorter side.
Okay. Yeah, I tend to go more of the middle or longer odds guys. Just it's my style. I like Berger at 40-1. I mean, not too many guys hotter than him in 2020. Just won a couple weeks ago at the restart. I like Woodland at 45-1. He kind of scares me a little bit because I think he's probably also, he's probably 45-1 to miss the cut just as much as he is to win. But played really solid last week. Finished, I think, T7. I like Abe Answer at 50-1. Don't forget about how well Abe Answer has been playing since the restart and just all year. He's a very solid tee to green player, makes very few mistakes, and can actually score in one of these kind of contests. I like Paul Casey at 70-1. I like Billy Horschel at 80-1. And finally, I like Corey Connors at 125-1. Guys like Connors, Billy Ho, Paul Casey, just known ball strikers, iron players. Billy Horschel and Paul Casey, decent records here. Everybody coming in pretty decent form as well. All three of those guys, PGA Tour winners. So I like those numbers there for those boys. And then finally, I got a couple of matchups here just to look at. I think the Rory at plus 110 and JT minus 137 is a very interesting matchup. You give me Rory and plus money. I will take that 9 days out of 9 days. I will take that. Don't really even care what else.
That means
on.
You would take it 100%.
Yeah. I also like the Tiger minus 120 over Brooks Koepka at plus 100. Brooks is just way too inconsistent, up and down. The irons aren't great, just way too inconsistent for me. I think actually that's a favorite Tiger bet that I will go ahead and take. And then finally, my last one that I kind of like is Rory Sabatini. I'm going to take 2 Rorys in the matchup bets. Sabatini at plus 100 over Lucas Glover at minus 120. I just think Sabatini's upside is better than Glover's. Glover's floor may be better, but Sabatini's upside is better. Played really well last week at the workday. He's played very well since the restart. He could miss the cut, but I think he has a better chance to finish top 10 or top 15 and beating Glover. So I think I'll take Sabatini plus 100.
All right, well, closing us out here, I think really if you're talking about like where you can find the best value for your money for win equity, for guys that are going to win, it's right there in that 50 to 100 to 1 range. And it is there. Like there are some really good guys in here that I think we could see win. And I'll start with Tony Finau at 55 to 1. I think we could see that win there. I think we could see Paul Casey at 71. I think you mentioned him. Fitzpatrick at 70 to 1. I think we could see him win. I like Joaquin Niemann at 80 to 1. I think that's a good number for him. I'm a big fan of that. And then Leishman, I mentioned at 90 to 1. I'm also on him and Poulter, Ian Poulter at 90 to 1, right there in that range. So there's a lot of good guys I think you could take. Longer than that, I do like Kiz at 125 to 1. We saw him play extremely well in his last tournament. He finished 3rd. I like Kiz at 125 to 1. I think that's a good number for him. And then the longest odds guy that I like, so somebody who everybody seemed to be on when we first started back after the pandemic, was Shane Lowry. Well, he didn't play really that great to start out, but I think his game's come around a little bit. He's at 150 to 1. I like him a good bit this week, so he will be another guy that I think you could play to win. And that's about it. I liked your matchup bets, so I don't really have anything else to add. Good job, David Barnett.
All right, thanks for watching Tour Junkies After Dark presented by DraftKings for the Memorial. We'll be back next week. This is going to be a fantastic week. Incredible field. Tigers back. Thanks for watching. Be sure and hit the thumbs up. Click the subscribe button as well if you don't mind here on the DraftKings channel. And may your screens be green. See ya.
Out.